Recently, the world's attention has been consumed by the Middle East. Its conflicts, crises, and shifting alliances dominate the headlines. But in the shadow of that focus, one continent feels quite overlooked. I'm talking about Africa, and two countries in particular that stand as stark reminders of what the world has chosen to ignore. Somalia, a nation ungoverned, torn apart by decades of civil war, piracy, and clan violence, where chaos has become the only constant. And then, just across the Red Sea, Eritrea, a nation locked in the opposite extreme, suffocating control, compulsory military service that never ends, a government so secretive it's been called the North Korea of Africa, one consumed by anarchy, the other paralyzed by repressions. In this video, I'll take you inside those two worlds of turmoil and tyranny, so that you can see that not all tragedy resides where the headlines point. I'll begin with Somalia, a country that since the collapse of its central government in 1991 has become a symbol of statelessness, where warlords, famine, and foreign interventions have left a deep and lasting scar on its people.
You can't move around the city without guards. This is our security. This is what they look like. Hello guys. We walk around the city with 9 armed guards. Instead of museums and parliaments, all that's left is ruins. You see, there's nothing left. But if you look further, the whole city is in ruins. There are hardly any intact buildings. Local women travel in separate shuttle buses. That's a woman's shuttle bus. He just stopped it. Men don't like cameras. And the markets are like torture chambers. They're just cutting up sharks right on the floor. Kids are shouting in Somali. Like this video and subscribe to the channel.
My friends, first let's turn to the history of this war-torn country and how it came to be.
Gold and slaves were exported from this land as far back as the 3rd millennium BC. Later, local princes traded with the Roman Empire. Then they were a part of the ancient Ethiopian Empire. Then they were part of the Ottoman Empire, and in the 19th century, the territory was divided in half by the British and the Italians. In 1960, British Somalia demanded independence. The British agreed, and soon the state of Somaliland was proclaimed. And 5 days later, it merged with the Italian part to form the Republic of Somalia. So another new country appeared on the map of Africa. This is how Soviet news reported about the holiday in honor of this event. The foreign delegations departed, taking their commemorative photo albums and postage stamps issued for Independence Day. Flags were removed, illuminations were taken down, and Mogadishu became small and quiet, not at all a metropolitan African city. The Italians in their short trousers and loose-fitting shirts were out into the main street again. And the poor of Mogadishu went back to their shabby huts on Bur Kalal Hill, from where it seemed easier to make their way to heaven. But now we know it will come down to earth more and more often, down to the center of Mogadishu, feeling that it is the master of this city, as well as all of this land, whose name is pronounced so softly and tenderly, Somalia. However, the whole further history of Somalia remained a history of internal conflicts and civil war. From 1991 to 2006, the country had no central government at all. And when it did form, it didn't bring much order. This African country remains one of the most dangerous in the world. Power is divided among family clans. Regions fight over territory and strive for independence. Additionally, Somalia consistently suffers from droughts and floods. All this leads to a massive number of refugees, poverty, and devastation. In this video, we discuss how Somalia is trying to emerge from chaos and become a civilized country. For example, piracy is almost eradicated here. By 2018, it was nearly impossible to encounter real pirates. By that time, their attacks had become very rare. However, neither the Somali authorities nor international organizations have managed to completely defeat piracy yet. This was mentioned in the UN report for 2019, and according to the International Maritime Bureau, the last attack off the coast of Somalia was recorded just recently. Friends, we are in Puntland. What is Puntland? When civil war broke out in Somalia in 1988, the central government was overthrown in 1991. Warlords began to control the country. Self-proclaimed states started to form. Currently, Somaliland has managed to form its own state quite stably. This is in the northwest of the country, which is now the most peaceful place in Somalia. The second, more or less stable state is Puntland. Puntland officially declared its independence in 1998, but soon after, a few years later, following the negotiations around 2001, they agreed to become an autonomous region within Somalia. Puntland is notable because it was the center of Somali piracy. Pirates from here made their raids on tankers passing through the Red Sea, across the Gulf to the Indian Ocean. There are no pirates here now, but that's Puntland's main attraction. In total, 3.5 million people live in Puntland, and Bosaso is the largest city. Today we will explore the largest city in Puntland, the center of Somali piracy. Maybe we will even find some pirates. So basically, there are no proper roads here. At the entrance to the airport, there's a guy sitting on a stool with a machine gun. That's all the security. And we're going again with 2 cars following us. We also have about 10 guards. All in all, it should be fun. We spent an hour at the airport, an hour sitting in this beautiful room surrounded by some people in white shirts from the Puntland Immigration Department. For some reason, they wouldn't let us through. I don't understand why we spent so long there, but since Puntland is actually a self-proclaimed state, it is in contact with Mogadishu, but not very closely. Therefore, it has its own atmosphere, and you have to get a separate permit to enter here. Somalia's piracy boom was between 2008 and 2011. Somalia has the longest coastline in Africa, over 3,000 kilometers. It has one of the busiest sea lanes in the world, the Gulf of Aden. After anarchy broke out in Somalia, no one controlled the coastal waters. According to the pirates themselves, they started attacking foreign ships because those ships started coming to the Somali coast and catching local fish. Local fishermen almost lost their livelihood, but soon found a new one. This is what a former pirate who was interviewed by blogger Anton Lyadov said 2 years ago. But soon after we lost the government, a lot of illegal companies started coming over here to fish in our waters, mostly from Thailand. Many of them passed through, destroyed, or seized the nets we had set. And as time went on, we couldn't fish anymore. There were too many fishing boats out there. And at some point we wondered, what do we do? The first was a large Spanish fishing boat. It came to our shore, where we had set up our nets to catch lobsters. They came and took them away, along with all the lobsters we were going to sell. One guy caught up with them to fight back. We ended up capturing the captain, and the Spanish, the company that owned the ship, paid a ransom. They paid money as compensation. And that money was the tipping point. Now everyone wanted easy money, wanted to capture more. So you kept the captain for a few days. How did you get paid? There were negotiations between us and the owner of the ship. After negotiations, it was decided. They gave us the exact time that in 3 to 4 days, a small helicopter would bring the money by parachute and drop it either in the ocean or on a ship. After receiving the money, we would release them. No one suffered from our actions. We were just hungry. Hungry for money because we had no fish to sell, to feed our families. We respected those who were in our hands. As soon as we got the money, we respectfully let them go. But when you were chasing the ships, did you have any weapons or did you attack with your bare hands? We had a lot of weapons. We had pistols, machine guns, and a speedboat. 250 horsepower. That's what we used for chasing. Wow, so you were heavily armed. Where did you get all this stuff? From ex-military. The main goal of the pirates was to ransom the crew members of captured ships. Hundreds of sailors from different countries could be in the hands of pirates at the same time, and the pirates earned millions of dollars. For example, in 2010, pirates received $7 million for the Greek oil tanker Maran Kantavros. On average, pirates made $150 million a year. A resident of Ilya, another pirate town in Puntland, told Anton Lyadov how they lived. Money came to them quickly. They had too much money. They drank a lot of alcohol, took drugs. They were stupid. If you told them $100 for a bottle, they would say, "No problem, here's 100." And so everyone wanted to sell them their products at higher prices. So everything became very expensive. Ordinary people couldn't afford it. How much money did you end up getting for the captain? $1,900,000. Really? Yeah. Wow, what did you do with the money? We divided it up among the group. How much did you personally get? About $40,000. The pirates' main base was the town of Haradere. They even opened a real pirate stock market there in 2009. It had the shares of shipping companies engaged in maritime robbery. People bought shares to participate in various attacks. They paid with money, weapons, or equipment. The pirates used the proceeds for attacks, in return giving shares of the earnings to investors. For example, Sarah Ibrahim, a resident of Haradere, invested an RPG-7 grenade launcher and several grenades into the shares. Pirates hijacked the Spanish fishing vessel Alacrana, and Sarah received $75,000. Small businessmen would pool their resources together and use the money to organize a hijacking. Today, the inhabitants of Somali coastal towns can only make money from tourists who decide to play pirates. Well, now we're going to play Somali pirates. We'll play Somali pirates. Here's this awesome wedding boat that we're about to take to the sea and try to find alcohol. The end of mass piracy in Somalia came in 2012. Joint military operations against them were conducted by NATO, Russian, Chinese, and African militaries. Also, several tough raids against pirates were conducted by the American PMC Blackwater, which was hired by the authorities of the Arab Emirates. So the guys offer sea excursions. They say it's going to be exciting and interesting. As soon as we left the shore, we ran out of petrol. Well, there's a guy doing some tinkering, and curious youngsters are already swimming towards us. What's interesting is that they don't know how to swim. They swim in a very strange way, and most of them swim in life jackets, even though they live by the sea. You see, the people are all swimming with life jackets or some kind of canisters. Puntland, where piracy originated, has the status of an autonomous region within Somalia. Somali authorities also consider Somaliland part of the country, but the region itself declared independence back in 1991, when the Civil War broke out, and it is still not recognized as a state. But in fact, the Somali authorities have absolutely no control over it. I was in Somaliland in 2013. At that time, I was not an active YouTube blogger, so I only brought photos from there. I went to the town of Berbera. It's pretty dreary in itself, but out of the interesting stuff, here's a way to protect trees from goats. These animals can often be found on the street. There is also a Soviet legacy in Berbera, and it's not just in the form of AK-47s, of which there are still a huge number. But interestingly, in the 1970s, there was a Soviet military base in Berbera. They built a whole neighborhood in the town, which, by the way, is still called Moscow. 50 years ago, Soviet military families lived there. Now, there are these dilapidated concrete boxes, but they're still better than most of the houses in Berbera. In December 2023, Somalia and Somaliland resumed talks after a 6-year hiatus. The presidents of the countries met in neighboring Djibouti. According to Somali media reports, the meeting focused on technical issues such as trade security and freedom of movement. The political status of Somaliland was not discussed, but the fact that such a meeting actually took place is already progress. The protracted civil war between these regions, different clans, and political forces has turned many cities into ruins, including the capital city of Mogadishu. You can clearly see the state of the city. This is the former parliament building. You see, there's nothing left. Everything is just ruins. But if you look further out, the whole city, everything that was built here is in ruins. Everything is destroyed, and nothing is being rebuilt. It's the poorest country on the planet. It has no money. That's why it's so sad. Look, I came up here, and there's my guard right behind me. These are the ruins of the old buildings in the center. Very beautiful. This is where they're drying laundry. The historical heritage is not treated well, so there's litter everywhere. There are kids swimming here, some fishermen. There used to be luxurious palaces, hotels, a good beach here before, but now you see the state of it all. This is what Somalia's capital was like in 2018. In 2020, Mogadishu opened a restored national museum. Before that, the library and theater were constructed, and this is the main cathedral now destroyed. It's been in this state for many years, but it looks like it's being restored now, so the cathedral will be back to normal soon. Somalia's problems began almost immediately after the establishment of the republic. In 1969, a military coup took place, and dictator Mohammed Saeed Barre came to power. The country was renamed the Somali Democratic Republic, but there was understandably nothing democratic about it. The powers of the president, parliament, government, and Supreme Court were transferred to the Supreme Revolutionary Council. It was headed by Mohammed Saeed Barre. And what do dictators often do to consolidate their power? That's right, they start a little victorious war. As I said, there was a Soviet military base in Somalia, and the country was receiving huge quantities of Soviet weapons. Hoping for Soviet help, in 1977, Somalia sent troops into the disputed Ethiopian province of Ogaden. But this war was not all victorious for Somalia. The Soviet Union supported Ethiopia, and in 1978, the Somalian forces were defeated. This defeat intensified internal divisions within Somalia. On April 9, 1978, a group of military officers attempted a military coup. The uprising was quickly suppressed, but several opposition movements with guerrilla units were formed at home and abroad. Gradually, various tribal clans took their side. Eventually, after 13 years of conflict, dictator Barre fled Mogadishu on January 26, 1991. But opponents of his regime were unable to agree among themselves and establish a new government. The country fell back into chaos and anarchy. There was no government, no president, and no state institutions. Essentially, Somalia was a fragmented territory, ruled by warring warlords and clans. Everyone fought against everyone else using the same Soviet weapons. But there were still attempts to create new states and some territories. Somaliland declared independence in 1990, followed by Puntland 7 years later. However, the two regions are still feuding and arguing over territory. It was only in 2004 that a temporary transitional government was established in the country. However, it held its first meeting only 2 years later. Further unification was prevented by increasingly active Islamists. Nevertheless, it was in 2006 that Somalia began to resemble a state of some sort again. Although even today the country's authorities do not fully control its entire territory. There is no exact data on the number of victims of this civil war. According to Genocide Watch, the death toll could be from 350,000 to 1 million people, and the aftermath of those bloody decades can still be seen on the streets of Mogadishu. Okay, that's the Bank of Mogadishu. That's what it looks like. It was almost all destroyed during the Civil War in 1991. Here in the old city, everything is in ruins. There is almost no intact buildings. In 2012, Somalia adopted an interim constitution and elected a federal parliament. But in fact, today the power in the country is held by a gentleman's agreement among 5 clans. President is chosen by members of parliament. In 2022, the majority voted for Hassan Sheikh Mahmoud. He was already president of Somalia from 2012 to 2017, but he could not be re-elected for a second term. Mahmoud was an ardent opponent of Islamic radical groups, and after his election, he continued the fight against them. By November 2022, federal troops had succeeded in liberating territory in the Hiran region and Middle Shabelle province from Islamists. The Al-Shabaab group was the primary target. It is believed to be linked to Al-Qaeda. In 2009, it controlled large swaths of territory in different regions of Somalia. The US, Ethiopian, and Kenyan militaries have been called at various times to fight al-Shabaab. In 2017, Islamists staged one of the largest terrorist attacks in Somalia in Mogadishu. On 14 October 2017, a truck exploded on a busy street after it was stopped for inspection. There was also a petrol tanker nearby which amplified the effects of the explosion. It was powerful enough to reduce an adjacent neighborhood of restaurants and government buildings to rubble. 512 people were killed. When the military or police drive by here, you can't film, so you have to put the camera down. This is our security watching the street. But despite the fight against Islamists, they still pose a threat. On the night of 9th and 10th June 2023, al-Shabaab attacked the popular Pearl Beach luxury hotel and restaurant on Lido Beach in Mogadishu. 7 militants attacked the restaurant after detonating a bomb there, and they killed 6 civilians and 3 military personnel. In 2018, Somalia was ranked 159th out of 163 in the Global Peace Index, published annually by the Institute for Economics and Peace, in terms of life security. In 2023, things improved slightly and Somalia moved up 3 places. But this African country is still considered one of the most dangerous places on Earth. For example, the American State Department advises its citizens before visiting Somalia to write a will and to choose a close person who will be able to communicate with terrorists in case of kidnapping. So we're driving to the hotel in an armored cruiser. The windows are thick, so you can't see anything. And of course, they won't open. There's security. This is what the entrance to the airport looks like. A checkpoint, some blocks, and then everything is destroyed. Well, this is where they welcome us. At the international airport, we've arrived at the hotel. There's even a firing point like this. Nice fence by the hotel. By the way, interestingly enough, they open all these fences even without inspecting the car. I mean, we can have anything in the boot, but they don't care, and they just open all the checkpoints and that's it. So that's how traveling around Mogadishu actually looks like. We have a pickup truck with guards in front of us. We've got a guy sitting here, and they're just so ready. Ready to fight back if they get attacked. Or they're just entertaining the tourists who paid several $1,000s a day for this show. You can't travel in Somalia without guards. To be precise, maybe you can, but I had no desire to test it. Usually you are given a squad of 10 to 12 men. Traveling around the city takes place in 3 cars, 2 pickup trucks with armed guards and 1 car driving you. In 2018, such an escort cost $2,000 per day. By the way, the main threat here is not robbery, but kidnapping for ransom. It feels like there are checkpoints every 50 meters. The most interesting thing is that there are different people at all the roadblocks. I mean, you have to distinguish them somehow by their uniforms, by their patches. Here we have some guards who are simply armed, and here are some Somali soldiers and some African Union soldiers. For example, some of our guides say, "You can take pictures, there's no problem, we will get you out of it." And for some of them they say, "Don't film these ones because we won't be able to help." But it's not very clear who you can tell who he can get you out of and who he can't. And this is how the guards you hire in Somalia work. I mean, you see, they secure the perimeter, they're standing right there on all the approaches so no one can get close. All in all, it feels like you're at least the president of some small country, and you came on a working visit. They keep people away from you at every turn, so no locals can approach. Our guards are very worried because it's getting dark and everyone is nervous. The guards are like, "Go to the hotel and stay in the hotel." But we said we wanted to go for a walk. And the local people, they're nervous about the guards here saying, "Stop waving your guns, go away." Anyway, everyone's a little nervous. Especially our guide, who thinks that if something happens to us, he won't have any more customers because we'll leave a bad review. There are roadblocks every 100 meters in the city center. They're very different. Some are military police, some are Somali army soldiers, some are regular police, some are local traffic cops. It's impossible to make out who's who. It is even more difficult to film the streets in such a way that a person with a gun who doesn't want to be there doesn't get into the frame. That's where your guards come to the rescue. We're entering the old town. Well, it's beautiful. The guy was upset that the camera was pointed at him. Well, yeah. He got quite upset. In December 2023, Somalia was allowed to buy weapons from abroad. The international embargo lasted since 1991, and according to local media, it made it more difficult for the authorities to fight terrorists and pirates. In fact, all the weapons now in the country are either Soviet heritage or smuggled in. Hello. Hi, here we go. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 people. 8. That's it. Weapons, Soviet automatic rifles, basically like everyone else here. Here's the most combat ready over there in their beret. Also in 2023, Somalia joined the East African Community. This is expected to strengthen Somalia's trade, investment, security, and diplomatic relations with its neighbors. In 2022, Somalia's trade turnover with the community countries exceeded $1 billion. Somalia mainly supports food, fuel, machinery, and consumer goods, and they export charcoal, bananas, livestock, and fish. By the way, visiting the fish market in Mogadishu was one of the biggest shocks on my previous trip. This is the fish market. It's all happening on the floor. Oh my God. Man, they're just cutting up sharks on the floor here. Fish market. It's just terrible because they're cutting up sharks right on the floor, and there's just a lot going on. It stinks. It's hot. It's rotting. This is what the fish market looks like. There's also a lot of flies flying around. It doesn't smell very nice. It's very slippery here. These are sharks. Basically, the whole floor is littered with sharks that are being butchered right here. Oh, and you can buy fresh shark meat here. There are tons of flies. I don't know how visible they are to you, but there are flies. I'm not sure about the freshness of this tuna, by the way. So he's going to... he's putting a rope through its gill to put it on like a rucksack now. Look, it's alive. They're both alive. That's crazy. One of them's still breathing. Look, they're still alive. They're lying in the sun. These are the half-alive ones. They'll cut them up. They're all alive. They're all alive, all these turtles. All this stuff covered with wet towels, it's all turtles. Somalia's GDP in 2023, according to the IMF, was $11.5 billion. It is 146th in the ranking between Tajikistan and Kosovo. By this indicator, Somalia is surpassed by many African countries. The country mainly earns money from agriculture, which accounts for 65% of GDP. Industry is mainly related to food production. Construction and private aviation are also constantly developing. Nevertheless, more than 70% of Somalis live in poverty. According to the UN, more than 500,000 Somali children are malnourished. In addition to the political and economic crisis, the situation is aggravated by natural disasters. Somalia suffers from drought and floods. In 2023, Somalia set a record for displacement. Due to military conflicts and natural disasters, more than 1 million people fled their homes in the first 5 months of the year alone. Most of them settled in refugee camps. Okay, we've arrived at the refugee camp. There are some kids here. They're all so small. The guy says we're in the wrong place. It's great here, but there are better places. In the camps, refugees have no proper housing, no access to medical services, and their children do not go to school. According to the European Union Asylum Agency, healthcare in Somalia is generally of poor quality. Public hospitals have to send their patients to private clinics due to lack of equipment and expertise. Due to inadequate storage of medicines, Somalis often die from usually easily curable diseases, such as measles or cholera. There are issues with the education system too. According to UNICEF data for March 2023, around 5 million Somali children are out of school, and there are about 8 million children under the age of 15 in the country. Because of widespread illiteracy, local shops use pictures instead of words on their signboards so that people can understand what the shop sells. See, wherever we look, there will be a bunch of pictures everywhere. There's a barber shop here, so there's an image of a haircut. Here is a pharmacy, and it shows what is sold in this pharmacy and what services are provided there. The pictures make it all clear. Very interesting. And most of these pictures are hand-painted. Well, historically, everything has been hand-painted. Until about 5 years ago, there were no printed signs. Now people are ordering these printouts. We can see that the shops here already have fully printed facades. But that's not the same, of course. Those hand drawings they've had before, they were heartwarming. Drawing what they have on sale so that you immediately see, like in the supermarket, the whole range of goods, either drawn or printed. That's what the currency exchange looks like. That's how they've drawn $100. It's convenient and clear that there's a dentist here, and you can see at a glance what the dentist does. You see, they're making teeth look nice. There are some workshops on the sides. In general, the scenery is about the same everywhere. This is the exit from the city. This is what petrol stations look like. This is one petrol station, and here they are in some booths. And it seems that here, whoever has more petrol has the bigger booth. They're diluting some petrol in these barrels. This is what petrol stations look like. All these buildings have a picture of what services are provided there, and the shops used to look like this in Mogadishu too. All the facades were painted, and it was very interesting. You see, there's amateur artwork everywhere. It's very nice, like the hand-painted film posters there used to be by the cinema. And now, they've started printing stuff on the shops. There's no romance anymore. Look how beautiful it is. You can tell this is where they sell juices. And this one here is some kind of medical shop. There's a hospital here. That's why there are medicines drawn here. There's a stationery shop here. It's all easy to understand. Boys and girls in school study together but sit at different desks. Children study subjects such as Somali, Arabic, English, Islamic studies, mathematics, business, environmental studies, agriculture, geography, history, social studies, and technology. Bell rings. Hello. There are more girls than boys. It's 5th grade. Yes, it's 5th grade. Kids, let's say hello. There, well done. Come on. There, yeah, well done. Well done, kids. Yeah. Kids shout, like this video and subscribe to the channel. In Somali. Okay, bye. Bye. Okay, kids, bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye. There are boys sitting in 4s and the girls in 3s. It's cramped, you see, they've got their desk set up so tight that you can't get out. I mean, you can't go to the loo. Wait, who's standing in the corner? Are you being punished? He was made to stand in the corner. That's it. Now he's afraid to go back to his desk. We rescued the child. We rescued him from the corner. And this is the bell that announces the beginning and end of lessons. There are no doors. There are many children, all clean and well dressed. And here are 2 more classrooms in this building here. From Canada. Does he speak English? From Canada. This guy's back from Canada to Somalia. His happy life is starting. University takes another 4 years. Yes, there are universities in Somalia. and they look pretty decent. Some students even have laptops. When visiting local universities, you could forget that you were in Somalia, if only you didn't have a dozen guards with you. We're walking through the university, and there are guards running up and down the stairs. There are beds, yeah. They've cordoned off the entire perimeter as usual. We've got security everywhere. And the students look at us like we're idiots. Two white guys with weird haircuts showed up, with cameras, and 9 security guards with them. Who are they? Why do they need guards? What's going on? Hello, children. They're sitting separately. Can you imagine delegations from Somalia coming to a Moscow university? And some Moscow university will have a bunch of security guards with machine guns running up the stairs? They're all sat together, and I think they're discussing where to buy beer. No, that's what you'd do. And these guys were sat here because we came. They weren't here before. We're going to see another building. Well, first of all, it's worth noting that the landscaping here is quite poor. It's dirty. There are bottles everywhere. At least they're not beer bottles. I think it could have been cleaned up a bit. Just a bit. They could have cleaned up a bit, yeah. Sweep it all. I mean, girls could possibly help. Oh, hello. This is the courtyard of the university. Here's another classroom. There are guys sitting here too, and girls sitting there. Hello. Oh, hi. Okay, the guy was supposed to know English, but he forgot it. Goodbye.
Somalia remains a land of fragments. Here they survive in the absence of order. But just across the Red Sea lies a different kind of story. Eritrea, a nation so tightly controlled that its government answers to no one, not even to its own people.